Guys, we're going to be continuing chapter 2. Now here's the thing. I managed to get through a first pass on everybody's LinkedIn profile. Good morning. And I'm very pleased. Most of the profiles look really good. That being said, guys, what I am going to ask you to do, if you make the revisions I'm asking you to make, please email me and let me know that you have made those revisions. Guys, here are the common mistakes. A lot of folks are putting nothing down for their experience section. Guys, even if you've had any experience in high school at all, if you've been a member of a club, if you have been a member of a sports team, there are things you can glean out of that that will count as experience. So let me help you with that stuff. If you are having trouble coming up with an experience section, let me help you with that. The URL also is a big problem. The Uniform Resource Locator, as it were, what we mean there is the web address. Guys, a number of you just stuck with the default and you lost points because of it. Why is it a bad idea? I know I asked this question before, but I'm going to ask it again. Why is it a bad idea to have a bunch of random numbers at the end of your URL?
Hard to find.
Exactly. You want it to have a ring to it. My middle name is Patrick, so I have my address as /Kent P. Tonkin. By the way, sometimes I use it as a bonus question, so if you're writing stuff down, I'd remember that my middle name was Patrick. If you don't write it down, you might not remember it for the test. But it sometimes shows up as a bonus. Just saying. Does anybody here know my dog's name, by the way? What's my dog's name? I've mentioned him a couple of times. I'll mention him this morning. Willis is his name. Willis Abner Stolfus Tonkin. And there's a whole story behind that. But for sake of our conversation, if you get Willis, that's close enough. Guys, what I want to show you on this, and if you have your laptops and you need to change your URL, feel free to follow along with me. If you want to log into your LinkedIn, feel free to do this. If you want to change your web address, this is how you do it. Bless you. I just logged into my LinkedIn, so I'm going into my section that shows how I can administer my page. If I click on Edit Public Profile and URL, it takes me into this section. You can see right here that I have already claimed my public URL. I'm lucky. There's not a lot of Kent Tonkins in the world, so it was really easy for me to get it. Although, I have to tell you, when I tried to not use my middle initial, there was another Kent Tonkin somewhere in the world. So that's why I put my middle initial. If you want to edit it, simply click on the little edit symbol, the little pen, and you can claim your custom URL. That's 10 easy points to get back by claiming your own custom URL. Again, if I dinged you on that, please change it and change your URL there, your web address. If anybody wants to try that now, feel free. If it doesn't work for you, see me outside of class, I will get you hooked up. Any questions on that, guys? Yes, sir?
Did you put the corrections you want us to make in like an email or something?
That's actually right in your Canvas. If you go back to the Canvas assignment, what I did in the feedback section, I went down through the grading rubric and gave you a score on every aspect of it. On the bottom, if you had aspects you needed to change on your verbiage, I showed you what to change. So scroll the whole way down to the bottom, and you'll see what I'm asking you to change. In fact, if you have your Canvas up, feel free to look at that and see the feedback I left. The biggest mistakes people make, the Uniform Resource Locator, the URL, was the biggest one. Some folks, for example, whenever they were posting their description about themselves, had some grammatical errors, things like that. No big deal. We fixed that stuff by revising it. A lot of people did not put anything on there about their work experience, and a few people didn't put any kind of summary at all. So I'm asking you to do that. Any other questions, guys? Okay, well, guys, we're going to jump right in for today. We got a lot of good content coming your way today. And we're going to start off with some current events before we get back into our discussion of economics. A couple of reminders, guys. I did not get a start on your 5 environments of business. Likely I'm going to start grading those on Monday. This was just a slammed week with grading. I don't like to go more than 2 days between assignments being due and getting them back to you, but it might be a couple more days just because everything was due this week. Now, the next thing that's going to be due in this class, as my voice cracks, are your economic systems exercise, which we're going to cover in class, and we also have an online discussion board where we're going to be talking about some current events in business. Both those are due on the 20th. That's next Friday. We're going to cover those in class on Wednesday. And if we get a little bit behind, I may even push those due dates back as well. Any questions, guys? I appreciate your emails, by the way. And here's your first chance of the semester to earn some extra credit. This is really, really cool, guys. Michelle Singletary, if you don't know who she is, she's a financial columnist for the Washington Post. And she's coming here to St. Francis next Wednesday night. She's going to be in JFK at 6:30. It is CES, so if you need CES credits, that's a really easy way to get some CES. And if you go there and swipe in for your CES, I'll give you 2 bonus points on our first test. You got to stay for the whole presentation and hear what this lady has to say. She is an internationally recognized author on financial responsibility and how to build good finances starting young. It's absolutely going to be worth your time. I will be there. Actually, I'm making my graduate class come to that because I am so excited about seeing her speak. So my MBA 504 will be there with me as well. So please come. Guys, we're going to start off with some current events today. By show of hands, how many of you have ever used a ride-sharing service like Uber or Lyft? Okay. Well, this is something you're going to want to see. California with Uber. What is the question? Yes?
Whether or not people like the drivers should be considered employees or contractors.
It's a big issue. So, and that's an absolutely correct analysis of the issue. Why is this something companies are concerned about? What's the difference in terms of how a contractor versus an employee is treated? If you don't know, it's okay, but any guesses? That's exactly right. If you're a contractor, what you're basically saying is, I'm going to do a specific task for you in my own way. I'm going to be able to set my own terms and conditions of employment. I essentially am going to be able to work when I want to. Some of the hallmarks of being a contractor, let's say, for example, one of you owns a house and I'm a carpenter. If you hire me as an independent contractor, I bring my own tools. I might tell you when I'm available, when I can show up, but you really can't control my hours of work all that much. You're not giving me a uniform. You're not telling me how I'm getting paid. I'm telling you how I want to be paid. And when we think about Uber, for example, how does Uber pay their employees? Uber or Lyft, how do they pay their employees? Anybody know? What's the percentage, but literally, how do they pay? Anybody know? How does Uber pay its employees? Do you know? It's through their app. So if you're driving for Uber, you've got an app on your smartphone that's tracking you via GPS. When you do the drive, at the end of the drive, you get paid a wage. Who determines the cost of the ride? Does Uber determine that, or does the driver? Uber does. So that would lend credence to the argument, if you're setting the way somebody is paid, if you're setting the way in which they receive their salary and the rates, that sounds an awful lot like an employee. Now, on the contractor side, there's one counter argument. You could say that these people are contractors. What might that counter argument be? If you wanted to say these folks were contractors and not employees, yes?
They're able to pick the times when they work.
Exactly. They're only working when they want to work. So there's a lot on the line here. So, for example, if I were driving for Uber or you were driving for Uber, is anybody taking income tax out of your payment? No. Is anybody taking Social Security out of your payment? No. Is anybody paying you benefits? No. So at the end of the year, it's up to you to claim that income, deal with your own taxes. When you're driving for Uber, who's paying your car insurance? Do you pay it or does Uber pay it? You're paying your own insurance, man. So the big question is, if these folks are employees, shouldn't Uber be managing all these things? If you were helping the state of California make a decision on this, what do you think? By show of hands, and there's no right or wrong here, I just want your opinion. I'm going to ask you if they're a contractor or if they're employees. Who here thinks that Uber and Lyft drivers should be viewed as independent contractors? Raise your hand if you believe that. Okay. If you think they should be viewed as employees, raise your hand. If you have no idea and have not yet raised your hand, raise your hand. It's okay not to know here, guys. I think that what happens in California, though, is going to be heavily influential to the rest of the country. Here's an interesting story for you. I met an Uber driver in San Francisco. I told you guys my horror story about being stuck on the Golden Gate Bridge, I think. Did I tell you guys that story?
Yeah.
Yeah, almost killing a couple of homeless people. Not a good day. But what she did tell me, if you drove in the Bay Area of San Francisco and you worked as much as you could possibly work, there are Uber drivers pulling down $150,000 a year just driving for Uber. Sounds pretty good until you realize you don't get benefits, you don't get health care, and at the end of the year, you're responsible for your own taxes as well. All this stuff is collectively called the gig economy. Has anybody ever heard that term before? What's a gig? If I said, and I'm not talking computer lingo, if I say it's the gig economy, what does the word gig mean?
It's kind of like not a repeating, like a job, I guess you could say. But it's I don't know what the right word is.
No, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
It's a play on a musical term. If somebody says they have a performance, musicians' lingo is, I got a gig this weekend. And that means you're going to go do something for a defined period of time that's not every week. And the gig economy is people who are saying, we're going to do several small gigs to build our income. Here's another trivia question for you. This could show up as a bonus question too. In the United States, what town has the highest per mile rate for Uber? I'll give you a hint. It's not far from here. Pittsburgh's a really good guess, but it's not Pittsburgh. It's not Philadelphia. All good guesses. It's actually State College, Pennsylvania. Happy Valley has the highest per mile rate. Doesn't mean that you're paying more for your Uber necessarily because the distances are small, but it's got the highest per mile rate. Drivers will come in from Harrisburg to work for Uber in State College because the rates are so good. Pretty crazy. But, yes, sir.
I have a question about the issue you just said about independent workers
Yes.
bringing their own tools. If they were contracted employees, what about the cars? I mean, the cars are their tools. Wouldn't Uber need to give them cars then?
I would think so. I mean, either that or you would pay them a mileage rate as opposed to just a flat pay rate. So, for example, as an employee of St. Francis, if I use my own personal car, it counts as work time while I'm driving it, and they also pay me mileage for using my personal vehicle. I would think if I were Uber and those were employees, I would probably provide them with cars to have some sort of control over that. And in fact, guys, Uber's doing a lot of autonomous testing in Pittsburgh right now, self-driving cars. Uber's end game is to not have drivers. Uber's end game is to have completely automated systems that we don't need people to run, ultimately. So, it's an excellent question. Any other questions or comments, guys? Guys, here's one of the things you'll learn about the world of business, especially when you start talking about some of these emerging models. Sometimes there are no clear, easy answers. People are hard. Managing people is hard. Technology generally is pretty linear. People are hard. Guys, we left off talking a little bit about the economy. We started talking about the invisible hand theory. What the invisible hand theory basically is if you reduce the impediments to people being successful in business, the businesses will benefit the entire community. Let me give you an example. Let's say that Ford Motor Company decided they're going to build a plant in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And let's say we end up hiring 10,000 people to work there. Wonderful for those 10,000 people. Who else in the community would benefit from that plant? Besides the people who are working there, who else would benefit? We're paying good wage jobs. Who else is going to say this is great? So we know the employees are benefiting. Who else is benefiting?
The other companies in that place that their money's getting put back into.
You got it. If these folks are, let's say I'm making $30 an hour or $40 an hour working for Ford, all of a sudden I'm going to go and buy nicer stuff for my house. I'm going to buy better groceries. And if I'm buying better groceries that come from the local farm benefits. If I'm buying more clothes at the local store because I can afford better threads, that store benefits as well. So what the theory is if you reduce the impediments to business being successful, the businesses will take good care of people by paying them well. They will share the wealth, and basically people motivated to work hard will do better for the entire community. So the example always is the idea of a farmer. If the farmer sells crops, he or she hires more people, more good goes into the community. Is there a flaw with this theory? Is there a flaw with believing that good is always going to come out of free commerce? What could be a flaw in this theory? Yes?
Sometimes people, I guess, don't spend their money.
Or they spend it somewhere else. Guys, if you were making, let's say your first job out of college, you were making six figures. You get your first big paycheck, and you could spend this on anything you wanted. Where would you buy something? Would you be going to the local store? Would you be going to Amazon? Oh, car dealer. What would you buy? What would be your dream car? Jeeps. Don't buy a Gladiator, though. You heard about the recall, right?
No.
Somebody at Jeep forgot to lubricate the drive shafts. So all the new Jeeps, the rear ends are seizing up while people are driving.
Really?
So that $60,000 Jeep has already been recalled. Maybe get a used Jeep, one that's already gone through the recalls. Some people will buy a car. That's good. It's putting money into your local economy. What else might you buy? I like going to Amazon and have a spending spree that's putting no money at all into my local economy. Not saying that that's bad. It's competition, but it's not always winning. People can also choose to not patronize the local businesses and drive 2 towns over. If you live in New York State, you might drive over the PA border where the sales tax is lower to make your purchases. So sometimes it doesn't always work out as planned because capitalism is all about competition. Guys, the meaning of capitalism is right in the name. If I say I have money, I have what? It's part of this word.
Capital.
I got capital, man. I got capital to spend, capital to invest. I can own property and make a profit and keep the profits for myself. Now, the countries that are listed up here are all countries that have capitalist economic systems. Now, there are elements of socialism in some of these systems as well, but not necessarily in the economy. For example, if you go to Canada, what's a benefit that Canadian citizens have that we don't enjoy in the United States? Universal health care. And Canadians generally pay higher sales tax than us to support this system, but they still have a capitalist system and a free market. Australia, England as well. England, very famous for its national health service. We also have a new and emerging type of capitalism called state capitalism. The best example of this is China. Guys, state capitalism, please, eyes to the front of the room. If you're working on one of your assignments, please wait until after this class. State capitalism means that you have a free market and an open system. However, it means that the government is still intervening in other parts of the economy. So please, guys.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Please, direction up front here, guys. In terms of the way that the Chinese economy, for example, works, they have a stock market. They have a free and open market, and they've got a rising middle class. But they still have a communist government. So there are systems that are experimenting with both. So that would be an example of state capitalism. If we start talking about what are my big deals in capitalism, I can own whatever I want that's legal. I can start a business, I can choose to share the wealth, or I can keep the money for myself. If you start a business, can I start a business to compete with you? Yeah, guys, think about this. If you go down to the main boulevard in any major city, you're going to see like 200 fast food joints. And they're everywhere because anybody can set up and start their own restaurant. We can compete. And you guys, as consumers, have a right to choose. So you don't have to buy from one place. When we compare that to communism, where the choices are limited or non-existent, we have got limitless choices. Guys, I will tell you that my favorite example of the benefit of capitalism is going when I walk from one end of this room or to the other. What the length of this room to me represents is about half of the length of the average ice cream aisle in an American grocery store because we've got that much selection and competition. That is the ultimate example of freedom of choice. If you like pistachio and I like fudge ripple, we can both have what we want. So President Roosevelt, FDR, the guy who was the president during the stock market crash in the 30s up through World War II, said that we had 4 additional freedoms that go along with our economic and capitalist freedoms. He felt that we had the freedom to speak our minds. We had the freedom to worship whatever God we chose. We have what we refer to as freedom from want. What he meant by that is that people shouldn't starve in this country. Even though we're a capitalist country, we have a support system that helps people get help when they need it. And freedom from fear comes into the idea that people should go home at night and feel safe. So when we start talking about the free market, guys, it's all about supply and demand. Let me give you an example. By show of hands, how many of you would say that Nike is your favorite athletic shoe brand? Me too. I love Nikes. They work really well. They're great, durable sneakers. Guys, how much does an average pair of Air Jordans cost when they come out brand new? How much? Like $200, $250, maybe $300, and they appreciate on the secondary market, do they not? Nike only makes a limited amount of Air Jordans. They can sell more, but but they don't make more when they come out with a new spell. Why do they limit production? Why would Nike make more? Yes.
I guess exclusivity, but also the more you make, I guess the less valuable it's going to be.
So we're talking, again, more people want them than can get them.
Yeah.
So the price goes up. They're creating a collector's market, essentially. I never thought I'd be talking about collector's market when it comes to athletic shoes, but it really is. So Nike limits supply and increases demand that keeps the cost up. That's because it's a free market. They can choose to do that. If you are a smart company in 2019, however, you're listening to what your customers want. Your customers are telling you what to make. Guys, how do companies find out what consumers want these days? Yes?
Social media.
It's all over the place. And the thing about it is, this is a point we will drive home throughout the class. If a customer complains, they are doing you a favor as a company. Why do I say that? Yes?
They're helping make improvements.
They're telling you what to fix. They're telling you what to fix. They're telling you what they want. If you read and engage with your consumers on social media, they're telling you what products to make. They're telling you, we want this. If you make it, we will buy it. It happens all over these days. But our consumers basically determine how much of a product a company is going to make and what kind of product we should make. Basically, anytime we want something and we can't get it, it makes the price appreciate. Do I have any video gamers in here? What is the most recent and hot video game? Maybe not so hot anymore, but like a year or 2 years ago, the Nintendo came out. What was the name of that console? The Switch. When did they start promoting the Switch? What time of year? Right before Christmas. So they got everybody hyped up for the Switch. When you went online and went to stores, it was a very difficult product to get, was it not? Yeah, it was. People were going without or paying above retail to get these things. What's the worst time of the year? Well, actually, let me rephrase that. What's the best time of the year for most consumer companies? Fall into Christmas. What's the worst time for consumer and retail companies? You got it, January. Guys, watch the calendars and watch how these companies do this. There's a reason why big video game releases happen in January and February sometimes. It's because all of a sudden this big buying boom that fell out now is coming back in the first part of the year. Well, if you're lucky enough to get a Nintendo Switch, you can buy some cartridges for it, or all of a sudden there'll be more Switches on the market to stimulate purchasing for all those disappointed kids who didn't get what they wanted for Christmas. It is strategic, and we do it to build demand. It's built into the system. So when we start talking about how this works, guys, we have what we refer to as a circular model. It's not hard to understand. If people have more free income, they're more likely to buy stuff they don't need, or to buy things that they do need but maybe go for the name brand instead of the store brand. So the more power a household has, the more it's going to be able to purchase. Businesses who are selling to empowered households and people who have more money can make higher-end products and things that cost more. That's why when we have more disposable income, we see more luxury cars on the market. That's why when we have more disposable income, we see more things that we don't need being purchased. So check this out, guys. Just a very simple example. I might say I've got a designer shirt. I think the shirt is the best. I love this color. I'm really digging this dark blue. I think everybody's going to love it. I'm going to sell this shirt for $50 a pop. If nobody's buying it, I'm making no money at all. I've got to determine what price I'm actually going to sell a reasonable quantity of this shirt. So if I lower the price, maybe people are buying more. So it's a matter of supply and demand. And what we come down to finally is where supply and demand meet. We get what we refer to, and I apologize for you folks over there who can't see. When supply and demand meet, we get the sweet spot called the equilibrium point. That means where I can sell the number I want to sell at the price I'm willing to sell. So if you're McDonald's, your equilibrium point is going to be higher than if you are Chick-fil-A. Why is that? Selling quantities of sandwiches. What's a cheeseburger cost at McDonald's? $1. Yeah, you can get $1 or $1.25, which makes you question how much meat is actually in that cheeseburger. What's the average cost of a Chick-fil-A sandwich? At least like $5, $6, $7 if you get extras. So Chick-fil-A can sell fewer sandwiches because they're building in a higher profit margin than McDonald's is. So McDonald's has to lower their price to sell more product to make up. To use a car analogy, because I love cars. You guys, we can talk about cars all day long. If BMW is selling a 5 or 7, whatever BMW they're selling, they have a higher profit margin built in than when Chevy is selling a Cobalt or a small car like a Cruze. So it comes down to how much money you want to make on each sale. That determines your equilibrium point. I would write this down. Equilibrium point is the place where price of supply and demand meet, and the company is selling the amount of product they want. And again, to show how these two curves work together, if you have the supply curve and the demand curve, the place where you're selling the amount of shirts you want to sell at the price you want to sell them at is your equilibrium point. If you're Nike and you're Air Jordans, for example, if you're selling Air Jordans, you don't care about big volume. You want profit built in. Make sense, guys? I cover that very quickly because I know you're getting the same stuff in Econ 101. But I want to make sure that that concept sticks. Before we move on to the types of competition, because we've gone for about a half hour now, I would like to start for our first questions of the day. Does anybody have a question or a comment? Sir?
What's your favorite car?
Like my dream car?
Yeah.
Okay. 1972 Ford Mustang Boss. Those usually came with like the 302, but you can get them with the 351, which is a serious badass engine. I want it with a 4-speed manual. Those are almost impossible to find because everybody who had a manual raced them and destroyed them. Grabber, like a Grabber blue or a bright yellow with the ram air hood and the fastback. Not that I've ever thought about this. So I absolutely, I'd take that over any new car if I could. But I'd have to have a place that could keep it and really maintain it. Like I need a nice garage. If I were buying a modern car, I would probably, believe it or not, I really dig the new Mazdas, so I'd probably get a new Mazda 3 with a manual. What about you?
Something fast.
I love driving fast. Do you have any angry drivers in here? Yeah, it's okay to admit it. Yeah, I definitely drive angry. My biggest pet peeve in the world is somebody using the left lane as a parking lot. Like I will drive ridiculous speeds to get around people who won't get out of the left lane. I've never got a ticket doing it yet, but I can't stand that. It drives me nuts. So, good question. Can I get a question or comment from this side of the room? About anything, guys. Don't be afraid. There's no dumb questions in here. I ask a few, but the questions coming from you, not dumb. Question or comment from this side of the room? Yes, sir.
Where did you get your hair cut?
Do you like it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I got it down at Stallion's Barbershop in Altoona. If like half of St. Francis goes there. I run into people from almost all the sports teams there. The guy who is the lead guy there, his name is Nick. He owns the shop. He's actually a former St. Francis men's football player, and most of the guys who work there have been friends for a long time. It's a great place. Definitely go there. Tell him I sent you. Maybe they'll give me $5 off my next haircut. So, great question, guys. Okay, we're talking about the different kinds of competition. There's 4 main types. We're going to get into each one of these. I'm here to tell you, anybody ever tell you nobody's perfect? Raise your hand if you've ever heard it. It's true. Nobody's perfect except our mom. Our moms are perfect. But nobody else is perfect. So there's no such thing as perfect people. There's also no such thing as perfect competition. We're going to talk about that. When we get into hamburgers and hot dogs, we're going to talk about monopolistic competition. Then we're getting into oligopolies and monopolies. And this is stuff that sounds complicated, but it isn't. So guys, perfect competition is like the ideal world. It's like if we had this world where we had pink clouds and unicorns and happy little trees everywhere, we'd have perfect competition. And that means everybody's got an equal shot at selling their product to everybody else. We all are competing on an equal playing field. Nobody's got an unfair advantage. If you want to try it, you can do it. It doesn't exist, guys. There's no such thing as a true example of perfect competition because there are always extenuating factors. Whether it's the market you're in, whether it's your limit of resources, whether it's government intervention, there is no such thing as perfect competition. It does not exist. That being said, we do have a good example of something not quite perfect, but monopolistic. And what we're talking about monopolistic competition is that we've got a lot of people in a market whose products seem like they might be different, but in reality they're quite the same. We have two major manufacturers of soft drinks. We've got Pepsi and we've got Coke. Well, will you raise your hand if you're a Pepsi person? Who are my Coke people in here? I'm a Coke guy myself, but if I look down the list of ingredients on Pepsi or Coke, the number one ingredient is going to be water. The number two ingredient is going to be high fructose corn syrup or sugar, depending on which brand you buy. Then we're going to get into caramel color and all the other large chemical compounds whose names we cannot pronounce, at least I cannot pronounce. In reality, if you put Coke and Pepsi under a microscope, they're almost the same product. But we see them as different. They taste a little different, they do, but it comes down to personal preference. If you get a chicken sandwich at Popeyes, if you get a chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A, they do taste different, they're marketed differently, but they're ultimately the same product. And if you go for Mexican, it's the same kind of tortillas, same seasoned beef. I digress. We select these products based on personal preferences, but there's really not a lot different about them. It's different how they're differentiated and how they're sold to us. That is monopolistic competition. So if I were talking about fast food or there's other kinds of joints in the markets, that's what we're talking about. We get into an oligopoly. What that means is we got a few people who are dominating the market. Let's think about this for a second, guys. If you go down to most of the suppliers of gasoline in this country, for example, there aren't ultimately that many companies. There's a few companies that sell to everybody. I would also argue that internet service is an oligopoly as well. Well, everybody, stand up for a second. We're going to do a little exercise. Yeah, seriously, stand up. And it's going to be an exercise where I'm going to ask you questions. And based on the answer you give, you're going to sit down. I want you to remain standing if you've got a choice of two internet, or no, let me rephrase that. Remain standing if you've got a choice of 3 internet service providers at home. Remain standing if you've got a choice of 4 internet service providers at home. Remain standing if you've got a choice of 5 internet service providers at home. Wow, so we got one person, 2 people in here who have a choice of more than 5 internet service providers. You can have a seat now. That's not a lot of choice, guys. When we think about the choices we have in every other aspect of our lives, we've got tons of choices. We don't have lots of choices when it comes to internet service. We don't have lots of choices. Ultimately, 2 or 3 companies, I hope you don't smoke, but 2 or 3 companies control the tobacco industry in the United States. And how many major car manufacturers are based in the United States? They call them the big what? It's a number. It's big 3. So we got Chrysler, well, FCA, now Fiat Chrysler. We got Ford Motor Company. We got General Motors. That's not a lot of different sources. If you buy a Buick or a Chevy, they're really made by the same company. Even GMC stands for General Motors Canada. So we've got very few people who are involved in these industries. And the reason being is it takes a lot of resources to get into these industries. The example is, if you were trying to start a new car company, think about the resources it would take. What's the last new major car company that's come into the United States, based in the United States? They don't run on gas. Who am I talking about? Tesla, of course. Has Tesla had an easy time with it? No. I mean, they've been struggling with making a profit since they came out. They're making great product. They're making cool stuff. But it's a tough industry to break into, and the people who are already players there will keep you out if they can. Then we get into monopolies. Now, we say in the United States that we do not allow monopolies, but it happens, guys. It happens with things that require extremely large investments. Let me give you an example. Comcast, in some parts of the United States, is basically your only internet service option. Where I live in my neighborhood in Altoona, I've got a total of 2 internet service options. If you are going into any given neighborhood, how many of you at home have natural gas for your heat? A few of us are lucky to have it. It's pretty awesome. But I guarantee you there's probably one company in your neighborhood that actually sells it. How many people in this room have an option of more than one water service company? Where are you getting it from? You're getting it from the city. And it comes down to the idea that we still do have monopolies. They're most closely associated with things like electric power. They're closely associated with things like natural gas. They're closely associated with things that are key part and parcel to our operating. So there still are monopolies in the world today. So, guys, I don't want to read a sentence from this. I want to hear from you. If we're talking about a free market, We're talking about a market where anybody can start a business, anybody can be successful or fail. Well, somebody here, actually we're going to go one row at a time. Somebody in this front row, tell me one benefit of capitalism. What's the benefit of capitalism? In your own words. What do you think, Sharon? What's the benefit of capitalism? Yeah, you can own and keep as much money as you want. From my front row here, what's a disadvantage of capitalism? What's something that's not good about capitalism? I'm a capitalist, so you're not going to offend me either way. What's something that's a risk of capitalism? Yes.
The gap between poor and riches.
If you don't have money in a capitalist society, you literally can start. If you don't have a way to get around, you can literally start. From my second row here, tell me another advantage of capitalism. What's something you guys like about capitalism? Yes.
I guess innovation that bring, like the products that come out of it.
And innovation. I'm going to ask this real here. Why do we get such innovation in a free market system? Why do companies try to do better than other companies? Yeah, make more money. You out compete. We're going to go over here. What's a disadvantage of capitalism? What's another wrong or potential ill of a free market system? Is there another bad part? What do you think? Even though I love capitalism, I can tell you some bad parts. Tell me more. That's a great answer. When you say antisocial, what do you mean? Because it's a good answer. We don't have, in capitalist societies, we don't tend to have as many safety net programs as we do in more socialist kinds of countries. Tell me one more advantage in this row about capitalism. Yes?
An advantage for the customer would be that since a lot of it's based on competition, they lower their prices and make better products trying to impress us. So the customers win.
Yeah, when companies are free to compete, people are going to buy from the best and brightest. Or what's the best price? What's the disadvantage of capitalism? Is there a downside? It can be hard to keep up. Absolutely. And with two more rows here, I'm going to let you guys pick. What's an advantage or disadvantage of capitalism? Something you like or think is not. I know somebody's got an opinion back here.
I think it also really like a drive to the country. Like if you invest your money in the financial system in the wrong way, you lost your money.
We're on our own. If you're investing in the company, you're on your own. In our last small group, can you tell me a positive or negative of capitalism?
It's undemocratic. It's negative.
So it can be negative because not everybody's represented equally. It's based on financial value. So guys, we have seen many times in the world. By the way, thank you for all those great answers. They were all very well considered. You guys used some great terminology too. Guys, one of the things we've seen in terms of capitalism that's been great is standards of living. You can earn as much as you want to earn. Good opportunities. But sometimes the opportunities are not always equal. Some of the limitations can also be if you have companies that start prioritizing profit over people, bad things can happen. In a later class, when we start talking about ethics, I'm going to tell you the story of the Ford Pinto. Who here has ever heard of the Ford Pinto? Okay, here's an example of American industrialism gone wrong. In the early 1970s, Ford Motor Company was trying to keep up with imports. Japanese cars were smaller, they did better on gas. And what's the hallmark of American cars in the 1970s? I'm sorry? Muscle for sure. What else? Were they big or small? Some of these cars literally were 22 and 24 feet long. They used to call them land yachts because they were huge. My brother owned a 72 Thunderbird, and quite literally the front end of this car was as long as these two tables put together. Parking this thing was like driving an aircraft carrier, and I think it got about 8 miles to the gallon. So Ford says, we got to do something about this. We have to be able to compete. So they created a car called the Pinto. Now the Pinto was uglier than a mud fence, handled like crap, and got decent gas mileage, but had one fatal flaw. Does anybody know what it was? For anybody's heard of the Pinto, what went wrong with the Pinto? The gas tank in the back was between the rear bumper and the frame of the car. What happened when that car got rear-ended? It blew up. And it blew up so quickly that there was no way to get out of that car without getting burned. Ford Motor Company did a financial analysis to determine if it would be cheaper to recall and fix the cars or pay out a few death settlements. Their accountants determined that letting people die was a better economic decision than recalling the cars. The memo went public. Somebody got it and basically said, wow, so you guys not only wanted to make money, you didn't care if people died in the process. That's the extreme that capitalism can go to when ethics aren't a part of it. I'll actually, when we get to the ethics chapter, I'll be showing you some crash test footage, no actual people being killed, but some crash test footage of some of these cars in action. So guys, in terms of tax rates, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide other than to say one of the hallmarks of capitalism is that people, as a whole, companies, pay low tax rates. People pay lower individual income taxes because they have less, they get less benefits from the government, and companies pay less into the economy, generally speaking. Some states, I know I had a conversation, great conversation, with some of my international friends, asking questions about sales tax. And there are really bizarre taxes in certain states. Actually, Pennsylvania even had a pizza tax for a while, but taxes are not universal in capitalism. We're going to move on. Actually, you know what, guys? I think because capitalism is such a big part of what we talk about, we're going to be getting into socialism next. And it's 9:45, and I think you guys deserve another 5 minutes in your day because it's Friday. So I'm going to let you go 5 minutes early today. Get a coffee. Enjoy your Friday. Remember, guys, it's Friday all day. And remember, when you